current regional security situation following recent developments in Afghanistan, our stakes as a neighbor and a long-standing and preferred development partner of the people of Afghanistan. In this context, we would undoubtedly discuss the need to stem radicalism, extremism, cross-border terrorism, and the dismantling of global terrorist networks. They will also discuss the reform of the multilateral system, including the UN Security Council. The Indian diaspora in the United States, which consists of about 4.2 million people, is a very important factor in the relationship. They play a major role and have been a pillar of support in strengthening the relationship. It is expected that the Prime Minister will highlight the importance of people-to-people ties between the two nations and the potential of enhancing these ties further, especially through higher education linkages and mobility. We appreciate the facilitation that has been provided by the United States in helping Indian students travel to the US for the beginning of their term. The importance of smooth post-COVID travel, especially for students, is also an important factor and is expected to be discussed. Owing to the prevailing COVID situation in the US, you know that the US is currently having about 145,000 cases a day. The US government has imposed a number of restrictions and limitations on gatherings. The program has been drawn up keeping these constraints and restrictions in mind. The Prime Minister's bilateral engagements include a meeting with Vice President Kamala Harris. This will be the Prime Minister's first formal interaction with the Vice President. It would be recalled that the Prime Minister and Vice President Harris spoke on the telephone in June this year. The Vice President had offered to prioritize India in making US vaccines available in the wake of the COVID situation at that time in India. At their meeting at the White House, the Prime Minister and Vice President Harris are expected to exchange views on bilateral, regional, and global issues of mutual interest. I did mention that the Prime Minister would be having some business level interactions with the objective of strengthening two-way trade and investments. The US is a very large investor in India. There are a lot of companies that have not only invested significantly in India, but also have the potential to invest either in terms of new investments or expand their existing investments in India. In that context, the Prime Minister will have a few meetings with select CEOs of leading US companies. Now on the Quad Summit, as I mentioned, this is the first time that there would be an in-person Quad Summit. This would be on the 24th of September, held at the White House. Prime Minister will join Prime Minister Morrison, Prime Minister Suga, and President Biden for the summit. As you would recall, the Prime Minister had participated in the virtual Quad Summit in March, convened by President Biden. This was the first plurilateral engagement of President Biden. It signaled the priority that his administration accorded to the Quad, and it was also the first meeting of Quad leaders, albeit virtually. We see the Quad as a partnership among four like-minded countries in the pursuit of common interests, in striving for a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. At the summit in March, the leaders had announced a broad array of initiatives, including on vaccines, infrastructure, emerging technologies, and climate change. The four leaders will share views and perspectives on the regional situation and the emerging challenges, including in South Asia and the Indo-Pacific region, on how to work together to contain COVID-19, evolve a common approach to emerging technologies, and a means of addressing climate change. The leaders will take stock of progress made since the March summit, especially in the COVID-19 vaccine partnership. They will identify new areas of cooperation that will reinforce the positive and constructive agenda of the Quad, including contemporary areas that will benefit the Indo-Pacific region as a whole. As you know, the Quad has acquired momentum in the recent past and has been seen as a natural evolution and elevation to the apex level in view of the fact that the four countries share core attributes such as democracy, commitment to pluralism, market-based economic principles. They also have a shared vision of a free and open, inclusive Indo-Pacific region. You add prosperity to that as well, and with respect for international law. This is a region that is home to all the 4 countries represented in the Quad, and many partners, including the ASEAN, which is central to Indo-Pacific outreach, are a very important part of that overall effort. India's approach to the Indo-Pacific was enunciated by the Prime Minister in his speech at the Shangri-La Dialogue in 2018, when he also expounded on his vision of Sagar, or security and growth for all in the region. On the conclusion of his program in Washington, D.C., the Prime Minister will travel to New York on the 24th of September evening, where he will go in for the 3rd element of his visit at the UN General Assembly. On the 25th of September, the Prime Minister will be the first head of state or government to address the United Nations General Assembly at its 76th session. The theme for this year's general debate is, and I quote, "Building resilience through hope to recover from COVID-19, rebuild sustainability, respond to the needs of the planet, respect the rights of people, and revitalize the United Nations." As you can see, it's a rather long theme, but nonetheless represents the main, I would say, topical issues that are important for the international community today. India is currently a member of the UN Security Council. We held the presidency in the month of August, and we steered the council at a fairly challenging time. While addressing the UN General Assembly, the Prime Minister would dwell on the important issues, including the regional situation, cross-border terrorism, global efforts to combat COVID-19 and climate change, and the need to reform multilateral institutions. The 4th element of the Prime Minister's visit would be bilateral meetings with our close partners, Japan and Australia. The Prime Minister will meet the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. This is their first meeting in person in the post-pandemic period. The 2 leaders have maintained a regular dialogue with 3 phone calls. As you recall, Prime Minister Morrison called Prime Minister Modi just a few days ago. They have participated in a virtual summit in June 2020, when the India-Australia relationship was elevated to a comprehensive strategic partnership. Just recently, we had our 2+2 dialogue with the Foreign and Defence Ministers of Australia visiting India. The 2 Prime Ministers are likely to discuss the gamut of India-Australia relations, and I think anything that is of mutual interest to both our countries. The Prime Minister will also meet Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, the Honorable Prime Minister of Japan. This will be their first in-person meeting and follows 3 telephone conversations they had recently. They will review progress in the close and multifaceted cooperation between India and Japan under the framework of the India-Japan Special Strategic and Global Partnership, and discuss priorities for the future. The Prime Minister's visit with the compact program will bolster India's key strategic bilateral partnership with the United States and our close partners, Australia and Japan. It will also consolidate the Quad as a force for global good, and will give the Prime Minister an opportunity to share his vision at the multilateral arena. From the US perspective, of course, I think when we look at the levels of support, we see a strong bipartisan support for a strong relationship with India, and a strong relationship that can strengthen the global efforts to further our common interests in that regard. We also, I think, as I mentioned, we have very strong trade and economic linkages. Bilateral trade in the year 2019 was at $149 billion, and I think there is scope to take that even higher. In the defense sector, we've had a number of I would say exchanges. We are now preparing for exercise Yuddha Abhyas, which is the army level exercises. As we speak, we are also participating in the Malabar naval exercise, which is underway in Guam, with the participation of Australia as well. The visit is also expected to provide momentum. In other words, would provide direction to some of the important bilateral mechanisms that we have, whether it's a trade policy group, whether it's a defense policy group or the trade policy forum, or a number of other mechanisms that are now ready to I would say, review that relationship in those areas. I think once this summit is over, we would have the opportunity to take them forward. I would say finally, let us just summarize how we see the overall visit. I think India and the US are both vibrant, mature democracies. We share common values, including the rule of law, equality, freedom, and pluralism. We are both free market economies and proactive shareholders in global issues, committed to global prosperity, peace, and security. The upcoming visit of the Prime Minister would not only enhance peace, depth, and diversity of our bilateral relations, it would also give an opportunity to further strengthen our comprehensive global strategic partnership on issues of mutual concern. So I think I will stop here, Arindam, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to look at those.
If your presence here is any indication, I'm sure there's a lot of interest. I can already see hands going up. So we'll take a group perhaps. Which ones should I start off with? Maybe here, right here. Just 1 second, then I'll come to you.
Hi, this is Sachin from the Times of India. My question is about AUKUS, this new pact which US has recently announced with the UK and Australia. There are concerns here that this could end up diluting the agenda of the first in-person Quad summit, if not the Quad itself, at least in the area of security in the Indo-Pacific. So are these concerns justified? Does the Indian side plan to take it up with the Americans in the bilateral in Washington? And did the Americans inform India about this before going ahead with the announcement of AUKUS? Thank you.
Please, yeah.
Foreign Secretary, related question. Our own deal with the United States on submarines has been languishing for quite some time. Emboldened by the supply of nuclear submarines, the promised supply under AUKUS to Australia, would we press harder? What is it that we are expecting, in terms of cutting-edge military hardware which we can get from the US? Thank you.
Sorry, just 1 second. I had a hand here.
मैं ब्रह्म प्रकाश दुबे हूँ जी न्यूज़ से। मेरा सवाल ये है कि लगातार कुछ सालों से हम लोग सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल के परमानेंट मेंबर बनने के लिए आवाज़ उठाते रहे, कई देशों के साथ कोऑर्डिनेट करते रहे। इस पीएम की इस यात्रा में क्या हम यूएन के मंच पर ये मुद्दा भी प्राथमिकता से उठाएंगे? थैंक यू।
Sorry, let me take something from this side.
So, as a prelude to the Prime Minister's visit, EM is already in New York. He's had meetings with various foreign ministers, foreign secretaries. He's met Foreign Secretary of Britain. Can you tell us what exactly has happened vis-a-vis the discussions regarding the vaccines, about Covishield particularly, what we've told the British side?
Let's take one more before I... Related where? Which one? There at the back? Okay. Both are related, okay.
Smita Sharma. Just wanted to check, in addition to what has been the discussion with UK, because the US is also supposed to come up with new announcements for its vaccine policy soon, in the next few weeks. Are there apprehensions about Covishield being discriminated there as well? Is that something that's on the table?
Okay. And the last one there, please.
Also on AUKUS, I wanted to ask, does India, we noted that EM has spoken to the French foreign minister, he has met with the UK foreign secretary as well. Does India consider the US decision to provide nuclear technology to Australia, something they have not done for submarines since I think 1958? Does it consider this decision as an act of nuclear proliferation? And what is India's reaction really to this aspect of the defense agreement between the two?
Okay, I think we'll stop here, sir. Would you like to take some of these questions?
Okay, so thank you, and let me try and answer, questions in clusters. And first, I think was AUKUS, which had a number of different strands to it. Let me make it clear that the Quad and the AUKUS are not groupings of a similar nature, and I'll try and qualify that. The Quad is a plurilateral grouping, a group of countries that have, a shared vision of their attributes and values. They also have a shared vision of the Indo-Pacific region as a free, open, transparent, inclusive region. The Quad has adopted a positive, proactive agenda with, as I said, a wide array of initiatives at the global level to address some of the issues of the day. This includes dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, including the supply of vaccines to the Indo-Pacific region. It includes working on new and emerging technologies. It includes working on issues like climate change, infrastructure, maritime security, education, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. There's a wide array of initiatives that the Quad has undertaken, which is, as I said, designed to cater to the requirements of the Indo-Pacific region. On the other hand, AUKUS is a security alliance between three countries. We are not party to this alliance. From our perspective, this is neither relevant to the Quad, nor will it have any impact on its functioning. I think with regard to Suhasini's question on nuclear proliferation, I saw that the Australians have clarified that they are working on a nuclear-propelled submarine. That means propulsion is based on nuclear technology, but it would not have any nuclear weapons, and as such will not be in contravention with any of Australia's or international commitments with regard to the issue of nuclear proliferation. But this, as I'm saying, is what I've seen, and I'm not saying it from any other perspective. We have also offered some of our partner countries the option of a mutual recognition of vaccination certificates, or vaccine certification. But these are reciprocal measures. I think if obviously, as we go along, we will have to see how it goes. But if we don't get satisfaction, we would be within our rights to impose reciprocal measures. Sorry, I think there is one on the US policy as well. Look, the US policy has been gradually liberalized, as you can see. We have been, we were under a certain category, we've been upgraded. The US also took steps, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, to ensure that visas for students, Indian students who had to travel to the US to join universities, colleges, institutions, were provided, were speeded up. I think that process is now over. They're now moving, from what I understand, to the professional category, where a number of professionals would be given visas, Indian professionals to travel to the US. We've also seen, as you mentioned in the report, that fully vaccinated travelers would be allowed to freely travel to the US. This, I think, is a positive news, because if you look at our rate of vaccination, we have administered over 800 million doses. The health minister yesterday made clear that we would be well within our target to vaccinate our entire eligible population within a short period of time at the rate of our vaccination process is going. And I think from that perspective, we should be able to ensure that a good number of our people traveling will be in a position to avail of this US opening. Now, you also have to keep in mind that the government has taken steps to facilitate vaccination of those of our citizens who are traveling abroad. Students, professionals, anyone going on official work, your vaccination will be expedited, and the period between two doses will be shortened. So that will also help our people in availing of systems. And I think increasingly in the international regime, you will find that there would be a requirement of people to be vaccinated before traveling. And this is already being seen. Even in our own country, if you have to enter malls, you have to show vaccination certificates. And I think this is something that, as the rate of vaccination increases, will certainly be an increasing trend. So I think Parul's question was really on strategic partnership with the US and whether that really allowed us to facilitated some of the technologies in the defense sector that we were looking at. I think it has to be acknowledged that we've come a long way in our defense cooperation, collaboration with the United States. I think for first and foremost, we have operationalized what we call the major defense partner status of India. We've also gone into what is called STA 1 level, which is a very significant level in terms of technology sharing, equipment, sourcing, etc., with the US. We have signed all 4 foundational agreements, as you know, LEMUA, COMCASA, all of the important agreements that were involved in creating the foundation and the groundwork for an extensive defense cooperation with the United States. We have also started on co-production on defense issues. As you know, many components of US aircraft, US equipment in the defense sector being now manufactured in India. And we have a very active group that encourages co-innovation. So innovation is an important part also of our joint involvement in the defense sector and defense industry. So I think we have very extensive cooperation. We have cooperated across the board. We have had access to some very important defense equipment from our perspective. There is a greater level of interoperability that has been achieved. And I think we have every reason to be satisfied with the level of our defense engagement with the United States. It's a partnership. It's based on a mutuality of requirements, and at the same time, I think it is now graduating to levels where we can co-produce and co-innovate together, and that is very, very important. I think Elizabeth's question about what are the details of the business level meetings that the Prime Minister is having. I've also seen reports in the media. I think this is still work in progress. We still have to get the full list of CEOs the Prime Minister will meet. Undoubtedly, I think once we land in Washington, we will finalize that and we will be able to release some of the names of CEOs that the PM will be meeting. As I said, it also depends on the ability, we have a COVID restraint, we have a number of constraints in that regard, and we will certainly tie all this up and let you know. But certainly meetings have been tied up. We need to finalize these and let you know. With regard to limited trade pact, I think, as you know, there was some discussion with the previous administration on a limited trade deal. Our Commerce and Industry Minister has had some exchanges with his counterpart, the US Trade Representative, Catherine Tai. I think they will continue to discuss many areas of our investment and trade regime, and whether that leads up to a continuation of a free trade agreement or a part agreement. That is something that we have to see. With regard to civil nuclear cooperation, in particular industrial cooperation, and I think the mention of Westinghouse was made, I think what is important is that our relevant authorities are in touch with, to be more specific, NPCIL, which is the company that deals with issues relating to the maintenance and running of nuclear reactors in India, is in touch with Westinghouse, and discussions are underway on how to proceed. We obviously have some positive movement, but there is also issues that have to be addressed, including liability and so on and so forth. But I think these are fairly positive discussions, and my sense is that they're going quite well. I think there was a question by Nayanima on whether the Malabar exercise is a Quad exercise. I think there is no link between the Malabar exercises and the Quad, and there is no link between AUKUS and Quad either. I think I've made that clear. That was the first question. AUKUS is a security alliance. Quad is a different group of countries working on a different vision. And in the same sentiment, Malabar exercises are those that are done between nations but has nothing to do with Quad. At the same time, we don't see Quad as a group, as a framework, has come a long way. As you know, initially Quad was meeting at the senior officials level, then they met at the foreign ministers level in 2019, then at the summit level in 2021, and now we are going to have the first in-person meeting. So it is an evolving process. It is something that is still I would say, in the initial stages of its functioning. And as we go along, I think we've already found a lot of common ground. And someone asked, is it a grouping which is only on issues that are dealing with non-defense, non-security issues? I think essentially the Quad will deal with all issues that would further its objectives of seeing our common vision of an Indo-Pacific region that is free, open, and inclusive. From that perspective, the Quad will function and will do what it takes. I think effort is to move on areas that would seek to co-opt and enable the Quad to cooperate with our Indo-Pacific partners. As you know, all 4 Quad members are also Indo-Pacific nations. We also believe in the centrality of ASEAN in the Quad's outreach. And from that perspective, whether we can involve our regional partners in vaccine initiative or in climate change or in HADR activities or in maritime security, these are all parts of a construct that would enable us to further that cooperation. And I think Quad has to be seen from that exercise. It is a strategic outreach to be able to co-opt and work more effectively and comprehensively in the Indo-Pacific region, addressing the issues of the day. On vaccine exports, I think you've seen that the health minister, when he made the announcement, spoke about the fact that our availability of vaccines, in other words, our domestic production of vaccines has doubled since April this year. That means in the last few months alone, our availability has gone up from something like 100, 125 million doses to about 300 million doses a month. And from that perspective, we have been able to vaccinate, increasingly accelerate our vaccination program. It's over 800 million now. We are doing 1.5 million doses a day. We've surpassed, at one stage, we have gone up to very, very significant levels. And I think from that perspective, what it really means that with the availability of more vaccines, we have the opportunity to export. And that is, of course, conditioned on the availability of vaccines for our domestic requirements. But whatever surplus is available, I think the health minister has made it clear that if there is surplus, we'll be in a position to share that surplus with our neighbors and with our extended neighborhood and others that require those vaccines. So, NSA will accompany the Prime Minister on his visit to the United States, but he will be part of the delegation. He will be assisting the Prime Minister. I don't see a scope for a separate program for the NSA because he's accompanying the Prime Minister, and most of the time will be taken up in very important meetings that the Prime Minister will be attending. On the defense side, I think we have some very significant agenda ahead of us. We have the 2+2 dialogue, which is expected later this year. We will also have the Defense Policy Group meeting, and there are a number of other dialogues which also meet later this year. The focus is on operationalizing the foundational agreements. I think that is an important objective on both sides. So I think that is something that we will work on. Whether India will join AUKUS if it's invited to do so is a hypothetical question, so I cannot answer that. Regional security, Afghanistan. देखिए, अफगानिस्तान का मुद्दा एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दा है हमारे लिए और यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स के लिए भी ये बहुत ही ज़रूरी मुद्दा है जिस पे चर्चा ज़रूर होगी। उसमें जितने एस्पेक्ट्स हैं उसमें ज़रूर बातें होंगी हमारे दोनों के बीच में। UN सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल का रेजोल्यूशन 2593 जो कि हमारी प्रेसिडेंसी सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल प्रेसिडेंसी में अडॉप्ट हुआ था, उसमें आप देखेंगे कि अफगानिस्तान टेरिटरी शुड नॉट बी यूज्ड अगेंस्ट एनी अदर स्टेट्स। तो ये बड़ा इम्पॉर्टेंट इंडिकेटर है जो इंटरनेशनल कम्युनिटी की तरफ से एक इम्पॉर्टेंट बेंचमार्क है। और जो देश आप कह सकते हैं नॉन स्टेट एक्टर्स या जो कंट्रीज इसके इस आइडिया के खिलाफ जाएं, उन पे ज़रूर नज़र होगी। रीजनल सिक्योरिटी आर्किटेक्चर और आतंकवाद के बारे में उसमें भी बात होगी. दिस इज़ अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, काउंटर टेररिज्म इज़ अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट ऑफ आवर डिस्कशंस. बोथ कंट्रीज अटैच अ लॉट ऑफ इम्पोर्टेंस. हमारे दोनों देश इस पे काफ़ी दबाव दे रहे हैं कि काउंटर टेररिज्म पे ज़रूर अटेंशन होना चाहिए. अफ़गानिस्तान में जो स्थिति है उस पर भी बात होगी. यूएस का विड्रॉल तो हुआ है, पर हम यूएस को ज़रूर बताएंगे कि इन अफ़गानिस्तान पे और उनके जो उस इलाके में नज़र ज़रूर रखना चाहिए. और आप ये ज़रूर समझ सकते हैं कि अफ़गानिस्तान का मुद्दा, आतंकवाद का मुद्दा, ये प्राइम मिनिस्टर के एजेंडा में ज़रूर बायलैटरल लेवल और क्वाड लेवल पे भी शामिल होगा.